key, the word is opposition candidates and their supporters during and after elections. Secondly, they stated property damage. Thirdly, we had forceful election rigging, torture, intimidation, and killings. These are things we've also witnessed, seen on news firsthand, so it's not a concept that is very far from us. Some of the voices that the young people shared with us: security officials in some districts are very alert. That means if you wear a particular color like me in purple today, you might indicate it's time to go. Yes? So the young people told us that. I know we also know these things, yes? These opinions might not be far from what we already know or what we believe ourselves. Another person said when candidates from the ruling party win the election, it signals to the opposition that they should flee the country. For those who can afford it, they flee the country so that they are not arrested. Yes? When we move to who are the perpetrators of election-related violence, in the room, if you believe that young people are the perpetrators of election-related violence, say aye. Nay. Nay? 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 Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me unveil to you who the actual perpetrators of election-related violence are.
Young people are victims.
None other than the political candidates, the people we want to stand in power, the people who we look up to, who we are hoping to lead us in our different spaces, are usually the ones who instigate or pour that fuel in us that makes us want to fight back. So this is what the research revealed to us. Remember, I said there is figurative language that appears in how someone talks, how they present themselves. Forgive me for using one gesture. Let me use my leg this time. How someone uses their body can all yes, but all these are meant to assert relevance within the electoral process and to gain voter support and to manipulate counts or protect their votes. This is some of the things that the young people told us. Number two, okay, before we go there, some of the voices, as you can see, this is from Bara City. When an aspiring candidate is violent, the chances that their supporters are violent is also high. So those of us who are youth leaders in the room, if you hope to stand for a position in the upcoming elections, remember the scale of justice. What will you anchor to? Either violence or peace? If a candidate without enough voters stands against one who has won the trust and love of people, the one who is disliked is usually the one who manifests the violence. True or false? But why? Why? Next, we have the young people ourselves. Young people represent the second largest group of people who instigate violence during the elections. But it is not for the reasons you think. It is not because they are idle. Usually, it results from misinformation and ignorance. They say, you see, those people who are supporting this party have come and they are beating us, so they receive some sort of misinformation. Whether it's online or physically, this is what pushes young people to engage in violence. Others who have not received any voter education, like earlier mentioned, are ignorant about the process. So as a result, when they're doing their campaigns, they decide to use violence. Yes? So take a look at this photograph. Who is the most prominent person there? Is it the political candidate, security official, or the young person? If you see yourself there, we apologize for having you.
Why a police officer carrying a black box?
We know security officials maybe.
I have a traumatizing story on a security officer carrying a black box. Almost wanted to shoot a presiding officer in Sereda by election.
Yes, we shall.
So if there is a wrong.
We're getting more data to back up the research. Very good. Yes, as we continue, young people resort to violence due to personal grievances. If you, in the last election, stood and promised to do something for someone and did not do it, in this coming election, you might be a target for election-related violence. Other young people who don't have money, to protect their votes usually think that violence is a way they can defend their votes No, I have Nino Kumakalo Lukangi. So as a result, they use measures that are unpalatable to the rest of the people that they stay with, or even to their fellow political candidates. These are some of the voices. One from Kasese district. I started using violence during the elections because one of the elected leaders had not fulfilled their promises. So those of us who are youth leaders in the room today and hope to stand for these positions, what is the right word to say? Yeah, we be mindful of the things we tell the people who we hope to vote for us. Another person said, in 2021, I ran as an independent candidate, and if anyone tampered with my votes, I was willing to take someone's life. Yes? Yeah. So these are the young people speaking. We move on to, what are the attitudes that young people have towards election-related violence? Are we all the same? Before you comment, comments will come out. What are the attitudes that young people have towards election-related violence? Number one, violence is an essential component of the electoral process. In many young people's eyes, as what the research showed us. They believe that it is impossible to have an election without violence. Those in the room who believe the same, say aye. Some youth are violent because it's one way to win elections, especially if you're opposing the government. The strongest violent opposer wins. But is this true? Not on, look at the different types of elections, not just the national level elections. Sometimes. Okay. Especially in central region. Okay. But what do the young people say? A participant from Kasese district said, all we need is change. Even if the elections are free and fair, we shall still involve ourselves in election violence. This is an attitude. It is a feeling, deep-rooted within some young people. Another from Wakiso district added, youth become violent to capture the attention of the media so that vote rigging does not happen. Is this the case?
Sometimes.
A participant from Bali City expressed, peace is no longer possible. People have resorted to violence because peace has failed completely. Remember, these are views, attitudes, opinions, and perspectives, no numbers. This is how people feel about election-related violence and peace. What pushes these young people to engage in election-related violence? The first, economic hardship is a significant factor. Like was earlier mentioned, those who are unemployed are excited to engage in elections or to vote, but they do it violently because they're either paid by the political candidates or this is just a strategy for them to be able to do what they want during the election period. Secondly, a candidate's stance on violence greatly influences the behavior of their young supporters, like we looked at earlier. Those who believe in violence will push the same narrative onto the people who they choose or who they hope to vote for them. Then three, youth engage in violence to settle personal scores and grievances, like we earlier mentioned. So these are some of the push factors. In the report, you'll have the chance to read more on what pushes young people to participate in election-related violence. Peace building in elections. We know that peace building is defined by a type of election that has no intimidation, no violence. But do we believe that young people can actually uphold this narrative of peace building or participate peacefully during elections? Yes, yes. Attitudes of young people. These young people who we had the research study done in the different districts actually said they do want to have peace during elections. For some, it's not an option, but it's something that they would desire. Findings reveal that many young people have a strong desire for peaceful electoral processes, viewing violence as a barrier, and we can all attest to that. If they tell you that there's the police or whoever there's tear gas in a particular area and you had to go to vote, you'll prefer to stay home, correct? You would not want to be caught in the crossfire, and this is how many young people feel. Young people stated that they also have families to cater for, yet many of us push the narrative that young people have nothing to lose. Really? No, they have their families, they have their loved ones, people who they are responsible for and would not want to die and leave behind. So yes, young people do actually have something to live for, and that is why they uphold peace. So what are some of those strategies that the young people shared are key to promoting peace? Number one, the youth emphasize the role of the electoral commission. You should prioritize continuous voter education to combat ignorance that often leads to election-related violence. Yes? Secondly, the youth said we need the government, NGOs, and local leaders to work together to sensitize communities about the importance of peaceful elections. How many of us youth leaders in the room today, as you prepare for elections, have taken the time to push the message of young people who you hope to vote for, doing it peacefully? Yes, that is food for thought. In addition, they shared that deploying trained electoral commission staff at different polling stations during the electoral period is a very good way of ensuring a smooth electoral process and maintaining the integrity of the votes that the young people are casting on that day. If there is no one to oversee the process, the chances that election violence comes up are high. Participants also suggested that establishing offices where young people can voice their views about elections is a powerful initiative. They have nowhere to speak. They either do it on their phones or they use violent means to be able to push their message. Either we don't want to do this or we need this, but if we don't have places where young people can go and have inquiries about how the electoral process goes, many of them remain ignorant, hence pushing election-related violence. So what are some key recommendations? Like we earlier mentioned, some are critical. The Electoral Commission is very critical. And on polling day, the Electoral Commission would consider using non-resident polling station officers, people who are not familiar to the communities in there, because the young people say the polling station officers in their communities are often bribed by political candidates to rig votes. So they don't feel comfortable trusting the people they know. They would rather have a system where the Electoral Commission deploys polling station officers in different places who do not belong to that community to preserve the integrity of their votes. Secondly, engaging aspiring candidates like youth leaders who are in the room today, and you know or you yourself are hoping to stand for an electoral position. Please engage your fellow young people or fellow candidates who you're going to stand with to make sure that peace is something that is anchored within the campaign messages, so that young people know that this is not something you're upholding. If you're silent when we're talking about election-related violence, that means you're complicit. You're silently agreeing that yes, we should be violent. So young people need to know that that is not what you stand for. Thirdly, one of the key recommendations was we need to punish election violence perpetrators. Yes, magistrate courts should ensure that perpetrators of election violence are traced and punished throughout the electoral cycle. We said it's prevalent during, before, and after, but it ceases after. It's more during the election period itself. But the people who do it oftentimes go and punish. So this is one of the key recommendations from the research. And then finally, the key takeaways. Number one, young people also want to engage peacefully in elections. They do have a lot to lose, as opposed to the idea that has been pushed that young people have nothing to lose, and that's why they engage in election violence. Secondly, the beliefs around election-related violence among young people are deeply rooted in their need for change. For them, change looks like violence. Yes? But change can also speak to different things. Thirdly, young people are not the main instigators of election violence. We are just the second. But there's someone up there who pushes, or who lights the says that's the right word. So it is important to note that young people are just key players when it comes to election-related violence, but they are not the main perpetrators. Finally, I started with this question: how far shall we go to achieve change? May we all think about that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Remy. The questions are